Hey guys, and welcome. Today I wanted to briefly recap and dive deeper into details around the nightmares in Destiny 2, along with Season of the Haunted Season 17. What they are, and what Eris is trying to do to battle against them, and battle against the darkness. In week 2 of Season of the Haunted, Crow finally successfully completes the ritual, and comes to terms with his previous life as Uldren Sov, turning the nightmare haunting him into something much less daunting, a psychic construct produced by the lunar pyramids to act as more of a defense mechanism. Now I want to go into detail around the differences between the two beings, the nightmares and the psychic constructs after the ritual had been completed, just to explain in a little more detail as to 1, why Eris is doing this, and 2, just what it means for the people in the Vanguard and their nightmares haunting them. Do consider leaving a like on today's video everyone, it'd be very much appreciated. Subscribe for more Destiny content covering Season 17 as well, and without further ado, let's get straight into it. So to start with, let's begin with explaining what the nightmares actually are. I'm going to read out a quote from Eris which goes into detail around exactly what they are and a lot more information about them. The nightmares appear to be extracts from our very psyche, violence manifested that wreak havoc, tormenting us with past trauma. They tease us with a life we once knew, prying into our minds and attacking our most vulnerable points. This assault on our emotions is aimed to weaken us and our sense of purpose. Nightmares are apparitions of darkness which are created by the lunar pyramid, specifically in this situation, the one based on the moon, and they're generated essentially for psychological warfare, manifested as past figures and enemies to exploit the trauma and worst fears of guardians and other beings. First appearing following Eris discovery of the pyramid beneath the moon, the nightmares include the phantoms of some of the Guardian's deadliest foes, including Crota, Fikrul, Ghoul, and Uldren Sov. So these nightmares are essentially a defense mechanism produced by the lunar pyramid to try and create that fear factor to any being within the vicinity, and it very heavily varies from person to person and their past trauma. Now to give an example of this, when Eris finally found the pyramids beneath the moon in Shadowkeep, she was then surrounded by a number of nightmares which were actually the members of her fallen fire team from back in the day. The likes of Ikora, as we know, is haunted by the nightmare of Cade 6, Zavala haunted by the nightmare of his dead wife, and Crow haunted by his previous self, Uldren Sov. Now it was mentioned in Shadowkeep that these nightmares could not be killed, however they could be contained. Now Eris has taken control of something called the Crown of Sorrows, and we're using something called the Nightmare Harvester in order to harvest the nightmares on board the Leviathan. Now after the first week of Season of the Haunting, we see the seance take place between Eris, Zavala, Crow and ourselves, and Eris initiates this procedure. Eris comes out of the seance with some very interesting dialogue, and after this is done, take a listen to this and we can go into a bit more detail. It explains everything very, very well.
There is a misconception among the Vanguard that nightmares are like spirits, that they are who they appear to be. This is untrue. They are forged from the darkness and born of your own subconscious fears, desires, and regrets. They have only as much power as you give them. We project our shame on these nightmares and make them real, but they are not inherently evil. No more than the darkness itself is. The nightmares are a weapon, and a weapon can be turned on its creator. I believe I have found a way to do just that. We approached the last ritual of severance the wrong way, attempting to banish the nightmare of Uldren Sov. But I should have known. Denial is not the way. Return to the Leviathan, Guardian. Harvest the nightmare essence we need to perform the ritual again. And perhaps this time acceptance will succeed where rejection has failed.
Now, the overall idea of us harvesting these nightmares within these public events is to essentially to get Eris to try and sever that connection that Callus is attempting to make between the Leviathan and the pyramids on the moon. To do this, we use the Nightmare Harvester. This is the thing that we place down into the ground when we complete the public events, and we harvest the nightmares within it, and come out with a currency called Vestige of Dread. This Vestige of Dread is used at the end of the ritual to complete the harvesting of the nightmares, allowing us to proceed with the ritual which we attempted with Crow twice already. Now the first time, Crow just couldn't come to terms with his past self, and essentially Uldren Sov got the best of him. He wasn't able to accept Uldren Sov's past life and some of the awful things that he had himself do. Whereas the second time we completed the ritual with Crow, he was successful and faced his nightmares. He learns to accept his past and work on himself moving forward, and not necessarily forget about his trauma, but learns to accept it. This resulted in the nightmare of Uldren Sov's inherent nature completely changing from a nightmare to something a lot less daunting to the Guardian, allowing him to accept it a lot better. Now, these psychic constructs are essentially created on the basis that the member of the Vanguard, or the one that's being haunted, kind of accepts their past trauma. As we see in Ritual 2, Crow did exactly this, generating the first member of our army to fight back against the darkness and the pyramid. My biggest worry for this is that Zavala, Ikora, also Eris in probably some cases as well, and the likes of Empress Keitel, even Callus, are going to have to do the same. And the issue is with this is that if they don't, it could jeopardize the entire plan that Erismorn has. We'll have to wait and see, but yes, it definitely does get very interesting when trying to piece it together going forward. So in summary, a nightmare is something generated by the lunar pyramids, and it targets the being's previous trauma. This trauma will essentially begin to haunt and taunt that person whenever in the vicinity of the pyramid or the leviathan, for example. And this is essentially the pyramid's defense mechanism. However, once that being comes to terms with their previous life or again past trauma, this nightmare becomes a psychic construct of some sort where the inherent nature of this completely changes, which then allows that person to accept their trauma in a way whereby it doesn't impact them or haunt them going forward, meaning that the nightmare is essentially no more. I presume that Eris will want to do this moving forward with all the members of the Vanguard, as I mentioned with the lot that we mentioned earlier, and have them fight alongside us to sever the connection between the Leviathan and the Lunar Pyramid. Maybe even help us fight against Callus too. But guys, that's all for today. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. I'm looking forward to the third part of the story to come on Tuesday, so make sure you guys are subscribed for, again, explainer videos coming out and everything there is to know around that part of the story. But guys, subscribe if you are brand new, drop a like on today's video if you did enjoy. Speak soon guys, and take care.